She does, yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so I think we'll probably make a start. So I just want to say welcome to everybody for joining us this evening for a watch along of Casino Royale 1967, the wonderful Renée Glynne. Renée has done a few events with me now, so it's we've done Avengers, New Avengers, and now and obviously a Cat Weasel one recently as well. But obviously this I think was the film that I was interested in talking to in the first instance, and then we obviously got into talking about a whole man of other things.
Yeah, it was so. Yeah.
So some of which I knew of, and then some I discovered through our conversations, and I've become a big fan of lots of films and things because of our association. I'll just go through some of Renée's credits for those that might be new tonight. So films include Women with Review. Obviously, this film, the original Avengers, she worked on a couple of episodes briefly with Diana Rigg and Patrick McNee. The New Avengers, the first series. Lots of Hammer films, not really the horrors, but the more sort of straight films they did before they became more known with the Hammer horrors. Things like Delta Force 2, sort of certain pulp films like that. Five Maidens from Space. Around the World in 80 Days, the mini TV series starring Pierce Brosnan. What other credits you'd like to mention, Renée?
The non-credited is Brief Encounter, of course.
Oh yes, Brief Encounter.
And the non-credited is Caesar and Cleopatra, because I was 17, 18 at the time, and Office. But I endured and experienced every moment of the prep and the shoot and the post-production.
We may perhaps have a couple of questions that come up perhaps about those two productions. You were production secretary, wasn't it, on both those films?
Yes.
I know a couple of my favourite films, obviously the Secret with Sam Wanamaker, which was in the 50s, and also Lady in the Fog / Scotland Yard Inspector, starring Cesar Romero, and also features Lois Maxwell as well. Penny.
And is reminding me that I worked with the Stones, the Beatles, and someone else he just said, but I didn't read that. I need it again.
Led Zeppelin.
Oh yeah, he pointed out to me that I've worked with almost every big band, but I'd forgotten. Hey, no, not doing that. Not doing that.
We can also, I think again we can perhaps cover things like the Beatles in our evening as well. So that'd be lovely.
Oh,
Madness, yeah. I'll just write those down for future so we can talk as we go. And also another film I think you didn't do that long on, but again I think it was a really good one, which is So Long at the Fair, which I think was a very...
No, I just did a couple of days on it. It was actually night shooting, and I saw Terry Fisher, but I didn't know him.
Because again, that's an early role of Honor Blackman, who obviously
the
Professor Law in Gold.
Yeah, I didn't realise who was in it really.
Yeah, it's a really good film, that one. John's just made a comment. He said there are lots of great stories about Casino Royale. The most, obviously, the most directors to work on, the most interesting director to work on the film was John Huston. He was noted as a director who was so naturally talented that he often treated filmmaking as a hobby, not a job. Because obviously Val Guest and John Huston were shooting at the same sort of time on different sequences, but I'll just sort of clarify that you just worked on the Val Guest segments of this.
I worked on I worked on the Val Guest segment and all the link shots to make the film viable for the producers, because they didn't quite know what to do, and Val Guest came up with all the ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if everyone's ready to begin, so I think we've got yeah, we're still waiting for Mark, but apart from Mark, we've got everybody so far.
Yeah, I think he'll be there later, or he can't, or something. I don't know.
Okay, I'll just make sure I haven't got an email from him.
I can talk about him better if he's not there, actually.
Yeah. Okay. So if everybody's now ready to start the watch along, so for those who just joined us, we're frozen on the MGM Lion logo for the film. So if everyone's ready to press play, I'll do a countdown from 5. I'll just give people 30 seconds or so just to get to the right part of the film, and then we'll begin. So if anyone's having any technical issues or anything, just let me know. But I think everyone's ready to go. Okay, so ready to press play. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, play. Okay. So yeah, just got the MGM line wall at the moment. So the film opens with a scene with Peter Sellers and the character Mathis, and this is obviously a scene that I think was meant to be more further along in the film than it actually appears. The one problem, of course, of having Peter Sellers being fired from the film after a certain point was that obviously not always scenes were shot. So that's one part of why the film is sort of a bit of a mismatch of, and sort of the start of its sort of crazy history, really. So first thing I want to ask you, Renée, because obviously you've watched the film in preparation for tonight. What were your thoughts on watching it as a collective film?
Well, I mean, I enjoy it more every time I watch it than I did originally, I have to say. And I finish watching it and I'm still thinking about not my episode, but other scenes in the others.
Okay, good. So at the time you saw it, obviously back in '67, you didn't you thought it was...
I probably didn't see it in '67, because if they had a unit showing, or the press show, trade show, press show, or a unit, we were always not able to get to them because we're working on something else. So I don't think I saw it for many years.
Because obviously it was quite a successful film at the box office. I think it broke a lot of box office records for various sort of cinemas. So it by no means was a failure. Obviously, I think it was, the critics didn't really like it, but I think it was a success in terms of money.
But I think people in the business were not proud of it at the time.
No, I don't think they were. Yeah, it is quite an eclectic film, isn't it? It's very psychedelic. It's as I think you say you're associated with a lot of cult films, aren't you? And obviously this being one of them. I think one of the thing that probably holds the film all together is the wonderful score by Burt Bacharach, and obviously that connects it all and makes what is essentially 5 different sort of segments more of a whole.
But they didn't really ever. We didn't ever very successfully link them, though. I have to admit, they stay as separate issues.
Yeah. They work very well in their own right as segments, but as you say, for example, the opening sequence that's filmed in Ireland seems very different to obviously when we're getting towards the end of the picture. So I'm not obviously because again, obviously when Val Guest came in, he also did the linking segments to sort of. So he did his segment, but then came in and did all the bits and pieces to make it as a one story. So
John's just asked a question of whether I had much to do with John Dark, and the answer is very much to do with John Dark, always.
Oh, lovely. So what sort of involvement did you have with John, and what was he like?
Well, he was like suave and sharp, and he was always production manager or associate producer or something like that. I may even have worked with him when he was at first, but I can't be sure.
So he was very much on the floor a lot.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, how did he did he ever sort of share with you what he thought of the production? Was it, you know, he just
we don't do that.
No. So one thing I want to ask you, Renée, obviously, because obviously we're going to focus very much on your career as well as the film. So I just want to go through, for those that perhaps don't know, how you became involved in the film business in the first place.
Oh my God. Here we go. So I was 13 years old when World War II started, and a Londoner. So my whole school was evacuated from Stamford Hill to Welwyn Garden City. And the train kept stopping and starting and going backwards. And I thought we were in Wales, Welwyn Garden City, you see. Yeah. But anyway, just up the road from King's Cross and my home. And I was billeted into various families. And at some point, my parents, who lived in North London still, got bombed, not badly, but the house was bombed. And so they scuttled and they came to Welwyn Garden City. And after a couple of years of me still being billeted, I managed to live with them, by which time I was 16, I guess. And my mother has always been a dressmaker working at home, which was her hobby. She says, I never did a day's work in my life, dear. And literally every day she was sewing and machining, but like directors who say the same thing, that was her. Anyway, she had a customer who was the scenario editor at Welwyn Studios. And by that time, I'd done a business course, shorthand typing, bookkeeping, and I was actually working in an office of a munitions factory. And I was, as I say, 18, and I was actually running this office. The accounts, the petty cash, the salaries, I can't believe it. But anyway, I was doing that, and I thought I was very, very important to the war effort. So when Kathleen Lever said, you know, I'm scenario editor and I'd like you to work in my department at the studios, I said, oh, I'd love to, but really, you know, I'm doing this job and I don't think I can leave it. Also because I'm a moral coward and I don't like having to confront people with, you know, a bad suggestion on my part. Anyway, she talked me into doing it. And I went to the studio to have an interview with the studio manager, who's this minute, I can't think of his name, but I will. And he was very foreboding. He'd been an actor. And he was a very good studio manager, but he wasn't very lovable. Anyway, I worked in her department, and she gave me the worst books that came in as being applied by a publisher. Perhaps you'd like to make a film of my author's first novel. And I got all, you know, the absolute dross, and she and her assistant, of course, read the good ones, but I mean, that's fine. And I did a synopsis of the books. And when I was at school, the one thing I liked was doing praises and synopsis. So I was in heaven, actually. And at some point, I got loaned into the accounts department because Aubrey Seccombe's secretary went ill or off. So I a bit learnt the accounts department in a studio. And then I was in the production office when someone was ill, and I learned a bit production office. And I used to go on the floor and see the continuity girl, as we were called, where everybody was asking her questions, and she was, you know, like this, the mini star on the set. And I thought, oh, that's what I really want to do. That it only occurred to me at that point that I wanted to be out of the scenario department and on the floor. And I used to watch her working She was a very interesting, strange woman, very woman. Anyway, my family moved back to London at the time of the buzz bombs, which was not very clever, but anyway, that's what we did. And I went with them, and I went to see the studio manager, and I said, oh, I'd have a 2-hour journey each way if I kept my job. And if you could promise me that I could go on the floor and be an assistant continuity, then, you know, I'd do these 2-hour, 4-hour journey happily. Or I think I'd have to leave if you won't promise me this. And he said, I'm afraid you've left.
Right.
So I left. But by then I had worked with a little bit at the studios, Two Cities Films, because they came to do Gentle Sex. And I saw the producers, the director, the first. So I went to their head office in Hanover Square and said, you know me a little bit, and could I possibly work for you? And they gave me a job. Del Guidice's assistant, who was called Guido Cohen, who eventually became the studio manager at Twickenham. And I had a lovely relationship with him. And he took me to Denham with him when they were shooting Hamlet. And I went on the set, saw Laurence Olivier performing. But also, I bumped into Gabriel Pascal in the corridor. I'd no idea who he was. He wore a leather waistcoat, no shirt, hairy arms, hair like this wonderful black and bit of silver in it, and foreign. And we bumped into each other in the corridor. And he said, like, who are you? What are you doing here? And I said, oh, I'm working for Del Guidice, Guido Cohen. And he said, is that what you want to do forever? And I said, no, I want to be continuity. And he said, I will make you the best continuity girl in the country. And he got me by my hair, which was long and thick, in a friendly way, and wheeled me, as it were, into Del Guidice's office. And I had no idea who he was. So he says, this girl, I want her to work on my film. And I turn to Gabriel Pascal and I say, I don't know who you are, sir. We called everybody sir, still do on the floor. I don't know who you are, and I don't know what film you're making. And he laughed, and Del laughed, and he was preparing Caesar and Cleopatra, which was the most expensive film ever made in England at that point, and had every actor possible in it. Anyway, he said, or Del said Caesar, and I said, but I'm still working for you and Guido, and anyway, I went home, and Gabriel Pascal's secretary, who was Anne Dealey, mother of Michael Dealey, phoned me for a week because Gabby said, or was driving her crazy to try and get me to be working as a mere assistant secretary on the prep. And Two Cities said, oh, for God's sake, don't go. He's a maniac. He really is a crazy man, and you're better off here. And I said, oh, well, that means I go then. So anyway, I went, and I did a year's prep with him, and had adventures, and met all actors. We can talk about that later. And when it came to do the film, he didn't make me assistant continuity. He made me production secretary. Well, it was okay. It's okay.
It was a nice start, wasn't it?
It was good. It was good. In a way, it was very good, because to go straight on the floor and not know producers and production manager work is perhaps, it's a bit clinical.
Yeah. And obviously, yeah, I believe you had an association with George Bernard Shaw on the, you were.
Yeah. Are we going to do that? Should we do that now or save it for later?
I think we've got plenty of time to do it now. So yeah, if you
okay. So during the prep, my main job with him was typing the script amendments that he was making to the George Bernard Shaw original script. And every now and again, I mean, maybe 3 times, not more than that, I had to leave the farm early where I was working for Gabby and go on. I walked down to Mumford's Lane, get a bus to Gerrard's Cross, a bus from Gerrard's Cross to Uxbridge on the Piccadilly line to London to Pall Mall, which was where George Bernard Shaw had his old apartment. You know, the wonderful brown. In America, they'd be brownstones. I've forgotten what we call them, but they're brick brown big buildings.
Yeah.
We might think what they're called later. A something block, like chamber. It's not chambers anyway. So I would go there and be there maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and he'd always be out for his afternoon constitution. Ooh. And so his housekeeper would make me tea. I don't think I drank coffee in those days, very young, and I was a tea person. So she'd make me tea and a little sandwich, and then he'd come in and he'd ask whether she'd done that. Yes, yes. And what about some cake? And he then goes off and he reads the amendment, and he, in his writing, changes what he doesn't like and makes copious notes on the script. It would be probably 3 pages, 3 pages of A4. It might even have been full. In fact, it would be foolscap in those days before we went A4 with America.
Oh, yeah.
It's true. We're foolscap. And this precious, rather flimsy paper, he'd give back to me. I guess I had special envelope, and I'd like clutch it. I didn't want to be robbed or absent-minded and leave it on the tube. And I'd go home, and then the next day I'd do this horrific journey to the farm from Willesden Green, which is where I was living at the time. I'd have to go to, now I can't remember how I got there actually, a mainline station, and then go to Gerrard's Cross, or the Uxbridge line. Anyway, there were various ways of going, but it was a long journey, still clutching this precious script. And that's the only times that I met him. And he was very, very sweet and friendly and warm.
Yeah, sounds like
but what's funny is when I was in Welwyn Garden City as an evacuee, I had friend boys and friend girls, and we used to cycle a lot. And one of our cycling days, we went to Ayot St Lawrence, which is where Bernard Shaw's house was. And we just looked at the house, but that was before I had the connection. But I still was a bit thrilled to be there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And what do you remember from a Brief Encounter?
Brief Encounter, yes. Again, I was production secretary, not on the floor, and I was on the prep, and again I would be typing. My main job was not typing script, but I was typing script, and doing call sheets and unit lists and cast lists and whatever else. Anyway, and so I was always in and out of Anthony Havelock Allen, Ronald Neame and David Lean's Cine Guild office, which was in the corridor a couple of blocks up from our production office. So I'd be taking messages or notes and things back and forth. I mean, I was handing them to David, Ronald, Anthony Havelock Allen, but not really speaking to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't ever have a personal conversation, but a friendly hello. And at that time, strangely enough, actor, oh God, now I've forgotten his name, I'll think of his name later and tell you the story. He was a young actor, and Anthony Havelock's secretary, whose name was Nancy Ewell, was a Scot, and she was encouraging this young actor in his career, and I'll tell you who he is in one moment. So I knew that, and so I must have had long conversations with this Nancy Ewell in the office, but certainly not to the elders. And I used to go on the set with messages or to get the call sheet and watch them shooting. Oh, and I have to say, I was only 18, and I thought this must be the most boring film that's ever going to be made, because how can you have like 45-year-old people falling in love, or 50? I mean, you know, it just can't happen. And I mean, I stuck to that for a couple of years, and then I realized, you know, how foolish I was. And now, you know, the fact that I worked on it, people are sort of licking my feet.
Oh yes, wonderful credit to have definitely, and it's a marvelous.
Like three generations later, you know, like the film students that live next door to me. Oh, you worked on Brief Encounter? Oh my God, you know.
So obviously Trevor Howard, obviously being in Brief Encounter, obviously I don't think you had too much to do with him then, but obviously years later you worked on Henry.
I worked on Aces High with him.
Oh yes.
And I worked on You Tell Me the Title, Please.
So Henry Rawlinson.
Yeah, so Henry at Rawlinson End. Yeah. I mean, that was an experience. That was a real experience. And the name of the originator of it, please, who died. Oh God. So tell me who was in it.
Obviously Trevor Howard was in it. Ian McDormand, who played the Emperor and
the musician, the crazy musician.
I'll have a little.
And help me.
I'm sure it'll come to us, but I was thinking, because obviously.
I mean.
Yeah. The main star of that, right?
He was living. He lived on a bed of grapes and fruit, all rotting fruit. That was where he slept, and he ate worms. And he actually ate worms.
Oh, so
I mean, not regularly. There's a scene where he ate worms, and he actually ate them.
That's definitely method acting for you, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and it's ridiculous. I can't think of his name.
But it was directed by just some look online. Steve Roberts was the.
Yes, I'd never met him before or again, and I mean, directors usually love me, and a couple haven't loved me, and he didn't love me. So it was a fine. It was all right, but you know, I'm loved by the actors, or I love them, and there's a lot of love everywhere. But I didn't feel any deep affection from him. Well, he was nice man, but it was a shame.
Because it seems like quite a sort of chaotic production in many respects, because it's one of those films where I wouldn't have seen had I not, you know, known you, and I sort of wanted to, you know, I've been interested.
I mean, I wasn't intellectually zany at that time, so I did find it a bit a lesson, but a bit strange.
It's either the best film I've ever seen or the worst film.
Yeah, well, exactly.
You don't know which it is, really.
I mean, I'm quite famous or infamous for working on, you know, the duffest films that are ever made, like it's a space.
Oh, Fire Maidens from.
Fire Maidens from Outer Space. Yes, yeah. I get great accolades for that now.
Yeah, it's a great title, that, isn't it? I think. What was? It was a top director came from Hollywood
and did it. I mean, how could he do such a thing?
Yeah, I suppose sometimes you don't necessarily know what the end result is. I suppose sometimes the best intentions, almost like the film we're watching now, it was conceived to be a Bond spoof, a bit maybe like the Pink Panthers or Austin Powers, and then turned into something quite different. So, because what was Trevor Howard like to work with?
Oh, he was wonderful to work with. He may have been drinking constantly, but it didn't stop him. He didn't fluff lines or anything like that. He was absolutely gorgeous to work with.
Oh, good. I was just having a look at the cast list for Sir Henry, and obviously you've got Liz Smith.
The fact that I can't, it's terrible that I can't think of his name.
It's Patrick McGee.
No.
Dennis Coffey.
No.
J.G. Delvin.
Devlin. No.
Harry Fowler.
No.
Sheila Reid. Vivian Stanhall. Susanna Daniel.
It's Vivian Stanshall.
Oh right, Vivian. Yeah.
Who also speaks on Tubular Bells, if I remember correctly.
Oh right, yeah.
There's one phrase at the end, and it was him.
So I was wondering about. Sorry, were you going to say something, Renee? I was just going to say that when you were watching Casino Royale, and the opening scene's always set in Scotland, and there's the whole thing of Bond trying to be his reputation being destroyed by all the women and that sort of thing, and the wonderful scene of throwing the big cannonballs at each other and all that sort of thing. What did you think of the opening of the film when you saw it recently?
Well, it kind of it goes over my head, I'm afraid. I can't concentrate on that episode in that way.
Because obviously it is so different, isn't it, from what happens later on.
I mean, I like it for the scene that it is. I'm fascinated, but I couldn't follow the reasoning and the next that happens and any of it.
Yeah, because it has no bearing, does it, later on in the film? So it's kind of sort of like like obviously as the segment it was kind of meant to be. Because obviously you obviously worked very close with David Niven. I just wondered what it was like to work with him.
Yes, no, very, very, very close, very friendly, very sweet. And he even was telling me that his mother-in-law had just died, and he was like very upset. Like he really loved that mother-in-law.
Yeah.
And so we must have had personal conversation. And that actually was during the Woody Allen segment. Although I worked with him, and the Money Penny was my friend from years earlier at Denham. What's her name? Canadian.
Oh, you're talking about the original Money Penny, Lois Maxwell?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because you worked with her on a couple of films, including Lady in the Fog. She was in that opposite season with Mero.
But I'm winding back to Denham when I'm 17 and 18, and she was there doing something.
So you became quite close friends, it sounds like.
And the other thing, when I was at Denham as production secretary, my best friend was a girl, and she was in the casting department. She was Adele Reynolds' secretary. And so we would lunch together, and I'd visit her in her office if I wasn't that busy, and there would always be these actors, child actors coming down to be auditioned or shot on by her company, which was independent producers, not Two Cities and not Gabriel Pascal, and we were under one umbrella called whatever it was, and Tom White was the production supervisor of Two Cities Films, and Gabby's film, and Launder and Gilliatt film, and Michael Powell. I mean, what an umbrella to run.
That's right. I think just had a question from John come in. I'll just sort of read this one. John says, I was listening while you spoke about Booth and Cameraton, but wanted to point out at the start, Celia Johnson was Ian Fleming's sister-in-law, and Noel Coward was a close friend of Ian's. So do you remember Celia Johnson at all?
Yes, I mean, I always was having to give her messages and things. And a lovely thing happened a couple of years ago. Her daughter and son-in-law played her and Peter, the husband, Lucy Fleming. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
And she, or I contacted her, or she contacted me, and David Shan Hemingway, who's with us tonight, and I were special guests at Celia's night, and we talked to them afterwards, and it was great. And this was at the very, very grand club, horse people's club in, not Windsor, somewhere. Anyway, David might know the name. And it was a really very, very special night. And I found an old raincoat that almost looked like wartime. And so I dressed down for the occasion, and I thought that was very, very good. Yeah.
Did they mention that you were there on the night? I think you told me that that Lucy knew you were working on the film, and therefore you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yes, we talked much. Yeah. Absolutely. What they do, I don't know if you know the show, but what they do is they play Celia Johnson and husband, and they read the letters that they wrote to each other during the war.
Yeah.
Peter Fleming, thank you. Who is the brother of Ian Fleming.
Ian, yes, of course, yes, yeah.
So magic all round it was.
Oh yeah, it sounds very much so. So obviously your association with Casino Royale obviously was with Val Guest, because obviously you'd worked with.
I mean, and I mean, John Dark could have thought of me.
Yeah.
He may well have done, but anyway, it would be Val that needed me.
Because you, I think you started with him. Was it 1940? William Comes to Town, 1948. I think was the first one you did with Val Guest.
I didn't hear the title.
William Comes to Town.
Oh yes, yeah. Oh yes. First,
I think.
Yeah. That was a gorgeous experience, because we shot at Olympia Circus, but Bertram Mills Circus at Olympia, and got to know all the circus people and the circus people that we used as well. And wonderful dwarf became a big friend over the years. He's very beautiful. Can't remember his name, of course. And Laura Knight was coming and sitting in the audience of the nights when we were just shooting out of frame and painting and drawing. Dame Laura Knight. And that was, a bit of a thrill. There were lots of thrills. Thrill.
So what was that Val Guest like to work with?
Oh no, he was the best person in the world to work with, because he planned the night before exactly what he was going to do. And the only kind of weird thing is he had a school board. What do you call a board on a
blackboard sort of thing? Blackboard?
Yeah. Blackboard, yes, a blackboard. And he wrote or he pinned up every setup that he's going to, you know, not just every scene, every setup for the day, like 20 setups perhaps.
Yeah.
And he kept to it. So that made him very easy for a continuity to work with, because we knew, you know, what was what. It was easy for everybody. But he, I mean, he was very sharp-tongued and speedy. He wasn't on speed, but you would think he might be.
Yeah. Did you get an idea from Val what he thought about being on Casino Royale and doing his segments?
Not really, no. I mean, he's so businesslike, you know, he just does the best. He raised the standard and worked fast, so that other struggling directors, the same with Jack Gold, he ruined it for all new directors because he was so good and so fast. So it was sort of an industry joke that you know, what has he done to us?
Yeah. So I suppose because of Val working very efficiently, that's probably one of the reasons why he was brought in, perhaps to make sense.
And like Jack Gold also, they're economical. They do not shoot what. I mean, Val hadn't been a film editor, but Jack Gold was a film editor. Anyway, they don't shoot stuff that they know is not going to be used, or Val started as an actor. I don't know whether that came through. He felt like a writer to me all the time. Yeah, he didn't feel like an actor. I'm glad to know he was an actor. Thank you, John. I saw Val and Yo when they were about 93 years old at the South Bank, also at a party. Marcus Hearn's partner, whose name I can't think of at the moment, had a party one Christmas, and Val and Yo were there, young. I mean, you know, they were younger than you, and they were in their 90s.
So what did you make of being on the film? What was it like what was the atmosphere like being on Casino Royale?
Oh, it was great. I just didn't, I didn't understand what was happening a lot of the time. I just did it.
Yeah.
And working with Woody was gorgeous for me. He rewrote every single word that he said, and he so needed me, which was nice. Okay. And he cared about continuity, which was nice. Until, I didn't say not recently, but when I began, actors did not think that they had to remember how they did anything ever.
Yeah.
Eat, drink, stand up, sit down. They relied on us, and the grip for tracking, had to be in cahoots with them, as it were, to know when they intended walking, so that he's going to track. But in those days, the actors were actors, and they were not worrying about those sort of things. And years later, an actor knows exactly what he's going to do, and he's going to repeat it exactly as he did it, because he doesn't want to finish up on the cutting room floor. Yeah. And he knows how important it is. So it became lovely. And American actors, leads, when it was the Hollywood, the Hammer Hollywood Greats that we did, every one of them was so well trained, it was heaven. And then RADA and such places taught our actors to care about continuity.
I see.
I had where I was really embarrassed before, the film Little Lord Fauntleroy, the actor, the lead, you have to tell me in a minute, early morning, not in costume, not anything, a run through. And it was a breakfast eating scene. And I didn't take notes of when he drank or did anything, because this was just a run through. I just watched the dialogue, cued them if they dried or anything. Anyway, at the end of this run through, he said, come, Alec Guinness, come. And he said, I hope, I'm sure you've taken note of when I drank and when I ate and when I think. I said, oh, I know, I didn't actually. No, I didn't. And he said, well, in future, whenever it's a run through, I will be doing that, or I will mean to do that for the whole sequence. Oh, okay. I died. I've still got a stab wound.
Well, so I suppose an easy thing, you wouldn't actually think a run through as you'd need to watch that. That's interesting.
John's just asked about when it's a tracking shot. Well, I just go tracking with the camera. I run alongside. I mean, if it's too fast, I can't. But in general, I run with them. And the operators are our best friends, really. One of our best friends on the set.
So what is again, no part of John's question is what is it like on a typical day on a set of a film? What would you sort of, how the day start, how would it end, and in between, what would it be like?
Well, I would be telling it now as if it's heaven, but of course it was total hell. Every day was hell, and I remember it now as something absolutely wonderful. So 8:30 call, I'm there at 8 or 7:30, with my Empire, which is an old lady's shopping trolley. Shopping trolleys now are fancy and trendy people have them. Yeah. But in those days, it was only like Mrs. Mop going to get some potatoes. Anyway, I customized them eventually, but mostly they just were a shopping trolley. And that was my office. I never had an office ever. And my stool hung on the handles. Any coats or more clothes was stuffed in. And I had my script, my second script and my third script, all of the same production for for my notes and all this sort of thing. And my Polaroid camera when it got invented. Yeah. And what else would I have? Stopwatch around my neck, never seen without a stopwatch. So don't get a bad neck from it, but it's like wearing a necklace all the time. And a belt with a complete office, pens and scissors and sellotape and I don't know what else around my waist. And so I was compact and get there, half an hour before the call. And then there's a run through and I take more notes now than I did before Alec Guinness reprimanded me. And then the actor, of course, doesn't want to do the same thing again. All he was doing was working out what he might do. Anyway, that's fine. And then you shoot, or you rehearse first, and then shoot. And then during the takes, I amend the dialogue as it's spoken by the actor. And I might have to write take 1 or take 2 to know which take it was. And then if they deviate too much or transpose too much, I tell the director, very quietly, he said this the wrong, arse about face as it were. Does it matter? No, it's fine. That's lovely. Thank you for telling me. Or I don't want to know. Thank you. Just print. The editor will sort it out. It depends on the director and the relationship and what mood he's in. But we learned to be very, very tactful, I suppose. And quiet, invisible, but a strong essence. And certain actors, Hollywood in particular, always wanted us in their, almost in their eye line, to, if say it's a close up and they fluff or dry, we can cue them. But they liked us somewhere way back, but where they could see us. So that was how it was. Now it's completely different. It's video assist. We have to sit at video assist with the director and not by the camera and not by the actors, which, and the first assistant now cues actors half the time, which is was used to be totally our job. No one like dared utter a correction. But I was 5 years old at school. My first school was called Church Street in Stoke Newington, and we had a Christmas play, and we were dressed as Greek, not urchins, what are they called? It's just like a sheet over your head dress.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're dressed and we're marching around to Haydn's Clock Symphony. I don't know why. And then there's dialogue, and this little girl, a little girl, didn't say her line, and naughty, cheeky me gave her line. So I was obviously a continuity girl in the making at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just currently looking at a scene with David Niven and Ursula Andress. So obviously this is part of the dating scenes that Val obviously came in to do, because obviously I think Val knew David Niven, I think before, and he thought, well, David would be good because of that relationship, and he, have a friend on set, as it were, to sort of do some of the scenes with. Do you remember Ursula much at all?
Yeah, I can't remember even exchanging one word, but I do remember her, and I thought she was lovely. And in the finale, I think I spoke more to then than I did at any other time.
Yeah. I'm thinking it because obviously Ursula did you find Ursula had any problems with her dialogue because of her anything like that?
No, I didn't experience it at all, and John's just asking whether she had a voice coach. She may well have done, don't know.
I think she did, because I think when she was in Dr. No as Honey Wright, dubbed by a lovely lady called Nikki Vandersil, and because of her heavy sort of German accent, and obviously Nikki, I think, did dub her on a number of films afterwards. But I think by the time Casino Royale came, she had lots of dialect coaching, and it's pretty much her own voice. Although I think Nikki was brought in on standby, may have done some voiceovers. I don't think any of that was used. I think it's all Ursula's own voice. So I think that's why we're both sort of thinking about that sort of aspect of it.
And I mean, her performance and that voice, I thought has always been beautiful whenever I have seen her in anything.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a credit to Nikki that how well she dubbed her in those early films, because you don't really notice the difference between that and this, which I think again is a real secret of of a voiceover artist. The scene we're on now is when Vesper is disposing of a body that's covered under a sheet, and it goes down into just behind the oven for disposal. Interestingly, that was sort of the end of a scene that we never saw, a scene that was shot but then was cut out of the film, and that was her disposing of 006, which is actually played by Ian Hendry.
Really?
Yeah, and obviously you obviously then worked with Ian Hendry on
a lot. Yes.
And so perhaps it might be a good time to sort of mention Ian a little bit. Yeah.
So my first Ian time was on Girl in the Headlines, and I hadn't met him before, and he was kind of difficult. Yeah. I mean, he was difficult because of drinking, actually. That made him difficult. It made him forget lines. It made him irritable. Blah blah blah. Apart from occasionally. I mean, that was occasionally, not all the time. And the rest of the time he was particularly lovely.
Yeah.
And on Girl in the Headlines, there was James, whatever, and the beautiful Jeremy, very, very young Jeremy Brett, I think. So there were these three male parts.
Yeah.
Which was, they played well together. The film was very good. And that's a film that I know I loved working on. And I remember at lunchtime having champagne glasses on my desk for if it was anybody's birthday at lunch, and particularly the actors. And I made Bloody Marys as well. And I did that for years on other films. And I did it once on a Hal Chester film. I can't think what it was called. Anyway, he saw this and he went absolutely raving angry. I would march you out of the studio drinking on, it was American. He's American. And you can only drink secretly in Hollywood. You cannot be seen lunchtime, evening in a bar.
Yeah. So
I didn't stop doing it. I just stopped doing it if there were American producers.
Yeah.
And it was fun. It was nice.
Because obviously, then you obviously would have worked with Ian, I think, in 1976.
Oh yeah.
With the New Avengers. Was he any noticeably different then compared to when you worked before?
He'd got sort of a bit old. He didn't look any older. I mean, he got older and tireder in a funny sort of way. And he, was still drinking, but it didn't really affect him in the latter years as much as it did early on in Girl in Headlines.
There's lots of good connections with Bond and the Avengers and things, because obviously Ian Hendry was with Patrick Macnee in the first series of the Avengers. Then Patrick Macnee had Honor Blackman as the companion, and obviously she went to do a Bond film, and Diana Rigg did Bond. So lots of interesting connections, obviously, with obviously we're talking about Cat Weasel recently, and obviously Jeffrey Bowden is Q in this. Did you like seeing him as Q when you watched the film recently?
Just repeat what you said.
I was saying, did you notice Jeffrey as Q when you?
I didn't even recognise him or notice him. Now, I've got to go back and actually look at what was his part and look at him. No, I didn't. I saw that he was in the cast list, but I actually did not, and I didn't know. I didn't know him in any way whatsoever. So I wouldn't have been that interested. As of course now obsessed.
Because obviously it's such a fantastic look he has as Cat Weasel when he's playing a much older character. And obviously,
I'll have to look. I'll have to specifically run to it and take a screen grab, I think.
Because obviously this is 3 years before Cat Weasel.
We're
seeing him as he actually is, and not about the makeup. And obviously, naturally, he looks very, very, a lot younger than he does in Cat Weasel, obviously. So, for those, it's easy for people not to associate it,
I mean, like John Pertwee could have been a Cat Weasel, and Jeffrey could have been whatever John Pertwee did.
Well, interestingly, obviously, because obviously John Pertwee and Jeffrey were very much renowned for playing these children's characters, Wurzel Gummidge, and also Jeffrey, I think, was offered the original William Hartnell Doctor Who back in '63, but he didn't want it because he didn't want to play another old man character, because he'd obviously a bit like Clive Dunn and Dad's Army, very much renowned for that sort of thing. So he didn't do it on that reason, but otherwise they could have been both Doctor Who and these iconic children characters. So even more in common than they actually did. So I think we've got a couple of questions come through. So I think it's John's comment, I believe. So we're checking. Yes, John says we're now getting some wonderful visual stuff in the film. One of the camera operators of the film was future director.
I saw the question. Nick Rogue. Yeah. Well, I've worked with Nick Rogue a million times, and I love him more than anybody as an operator and director, because I did a bit on the Witches, I think it was called. Anyway, what I was really going to say to John was that he was the operator on Fire Maidens. And he is a giggler and a laugher, and the focus puller was his usual focus puller, and they were joking. They couldn't operate at certain points. We were laughing at, not with, this awful acting and awful directing of this wonderful film, Fire Maidens.
Because John goes on to say that Nicholas had a remarkable visual style. Did you sense that he was having a great deal of influence on the style of Casino Royale?
I mean, he did, but I was not aware of it. It didn't strike me. Tony Richmond was a focus puller on it. I think he wasn't. I don't think he was an operator, and he was doing the behind the scenes film of Casino Royale, and that was where I first met him. And he was really young, and he always looked younger than he was. But I mean, he was very young, and he was very ambitious. And he'd come up, from the street, as it were. Came up via Wardour Street and on little films, and he had many years of experience unknown by the mainstream. But one knew that he was going to be a star camera person from that behind the scenes stuff.
We had a question from Henry come in. So Henry said you worked with Desmond Llewellyn, who obviously was a Q in the James Bond, the official James Bond series. The film was The Golden Lady in 1979. He does add that it's a very hard film to get hold of.
Is it?
The memories of...
Yeah, I have memories of that, and I have wonderful memories of Jose Larraz anyway. From my film, I'll think of the title in a minute. I can't think of the title just at this minute. Anyway, he was a very competent, fast director, and he made many good Spanish films and horror English, which I didn't even know about. Golden Lady was a mess, really. It was meant to be it was a female Bond, really. She was a female Bond. I think she was a Danish or Swedish actress, and the acting in it really is a bit suspect, I have to say. So I mean, I don't think I've seen it since those days. I've never heard of it popping up.
Did you remember Desmond Llewellyn from it at all?
Again?
Oh, so do you remember Desmond Llewellyn, who was in the film?
No.
Because he was obviously the main quartermaster for, I think it's in the first, I think it's in 17 of the first 19 Bond films.
Really?
And we're currently watching the Q scene now with Jeffrey and Peter, and there's lots of visual gags in this film, particularly the chief security person of MI5, who's a dwarf in a sort of garden gnome outfit with binoculars, and he's supposed to be following Peter Sellers and Notice. It's really mad, but quite good.
It's very zany. It's zany, I suppose, is the word best describing it, isn't it?
Yeah. And of course, this film, I think, was a big inspiration for Mike Myers when he did the Austin Powers films. So if it didn't have this, it wouldn't have Austin Powers. So
really, yeah. I never. I mean, I could almost say I've never seen an Austin Powers. I've seen, you know, the title and the actor, but I've never managed to watch one.
Oh, if you do get a chance to see them, you'll certainly see the link between this and them. So it's quite interesting how this film has had an influence.
I'm glad to hear it.
And there is even some jokes that end up in the official Bond series. I don't think they actually copied the jokes, but I suppose just by coincidence, the same sort of things. There's a joke about a poison pen that Peter Sellers is given that writes out as acid, and that appears in Octopussy with Roger Moore. And
Really?
the same joke comes at Wonderful for Writing. And that is exactly word for word. And also in Moonraker, the villain is very rich and powerful, so he buys the Eiffel Tower, and he also gets this mansion imported from Paris to California and rebuilds it brick by brick. And that's a bit similar to Ursula Andress buying the statue of Lord Nelson to Trafalgar Square and then moving it to her office. So there's certain things just by chance that happen to sort of almost be, you know, quite a coincidence that it sort of appears later on, really. One thing I wanted to ask, because obviously back then, obviously continuity, which obviously now people in continuity be script supervisors, but back then obviously it was continuity girl.
Yeah, it was continuity girl, and then it got to continuity or script, and in France it's le script. In Italy it was Segretario de Edizione.
Yes.
So it's secretary of the editor.
Yes.
But anyway, Angela Allen fought for us to be called something other than script anything, and than continuity anything, and she got script supervisor because we had always been Schedule D, and suddenly, because we were called continuity for some reason, the government decided that we would be PAYE. So we had to invent a name that nobody understood really. And also the camera crew were in the same, the focus pullers and the boom operators were in the same position of they didn't change their name, but they fought to stay on Schedule D. Yeah. So it was good Angela that got us called script supervisors.
Oh, wonderful. You mentioned that you had multiple copies of a script.
Yeah, so I have my master copy that I mark up every shot with it's called tram lines.
Yeah.
And then I've got a clean one that I make exactly the same markings, but not untidily, you know, because I have to write very, very small and half small writing and half shorthand. But for the film editor, it has to be in legible writing. So I've always got this second script, which I take out the pages for the day. And while I'm doing my messy tramline script, hopefully there's the odd moment where they're lighting, I can do the notes for the editor, whereby I don't have to stay up all night doing them. So that's two copies. And then I've got another one, which I might want to just take pages out for some reason instead of carrying a whole script. But it's rare, but I want to have it. So that's 3 I have to have.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're very thick.
Yes.
So this trolley, if I used to have a rucksack before the trolley, and it was very heavy.
Yeah.
And the props are obligated to help us, but they're busy doing something, and then that the grip might help us. But the job includes the prop job includes looking after us. But in America, nobody looks after us, and it's out of kindness that the grip or the clapper or somebody will help us. Yeah. And out east, we get a boy, he's called, he was at my boy was like 60, I think. And he was there with the umbrella and wheeling me and taking my stool everywhere. You know, there wasn't a moment, it was too hot to do your own thing anyway. Yeah. And they when I went to the Philippines 3 times, I think, it was always for action movies, like 5 cameras, and I did it to the manner born. I mean, I never wanted to do it, and I never thought I could do it. After my 8 years with Jack Gold of domestic sort of lovely dramas, I thought, now I want to go on in the big bad world, not with him, because he just stopped, I guess. And I started I only got mini blockbusters out east. Yeah. And it was, and I think I was 60, and I thought, and Hungary a couple of times too. And it was always, you know, big films and several cameras and units, and I did it to the manner born. I loved it, but I never dreamt of wanting to do it, or I suppose I always knew I could, but I did it better than I probably did Jack Gold's dramas.
Because one of those quite good film is Delta Force 2 with
I've just been seeing it. It's been on Freeview 81, I think, like 3 times, and I've watched it, and I'm amazed how good it looks, because we thought, which is like terrible to admit, that Chuck Norris is like this terrible actor. I mean, he's a brilliant film artist, but acting, but he convinces me in Delta Force 2 completely.
No, yeah.
I'm not thinking, oh, you know, why? Oh, we had the most terrible accident on Delta Force 2, the most dreadful thing you could imagine. It's very sad. It was the helicopter shot, and the pilot was a Filipino army pilot. Yeah. And in this shot was our gaffer, American gaffer, American young grip, Israeli focus puller, American elderly, well-known actor. Have I forgotten anybody? I hope not. Anyway, this helicopter shot, we were at the top of our little mountain. Yeah. And the helicopter was supposed to rise, stay up there, have a dialogue, and the sound guy, sound mixer, and I always had to work out the scene number for the slate, because Americans shoot in scene order, not the English way of slate order. So we said this is scene 71D, because all it's going to do is part of 71, and it's going to do this. So it goes up, they do the dialogue, and then the pilots the helicopter down the mountain. It hits rocks all the way down. It explodes at the bottom. It kills the pilot, and it wounds very seriously. And the stuntman, who'd been promoted from stuntman to a real actor, and the focus puller was, you know, badly injured but recovered. Yeah. The elderly actor recovered. And at the top of the mountain, there was the hairdresser sobbing because the Israeli cameraman, and this hairdresser was having a love affair with him, and she was actually pregnant. So she was, you know, hysterical beyond help. A little Filipina was being helped by the elderly actor, her whole family. He'd got to know, Don Marshall, and Mike, And Gaddy, yes, I didn't read the last bit. Thank you, John. I'm you know, I could cry right now. It was just so terrible, so terrible. And so we stopped shooting, and I went up to Benawi and the rice fields, and to meet the family of the Filipina that I employed to look after, live in and look after my mother. And I went to meet her family. It was magic, absolute magic. Anyway, we stopped shooting, and they did some. We were almost finished, but they had to do some scenes in America, and they wouldn't, of course, ask me to go. Or let me go or whatever. So somebody else finished the film off as continuity.
I see. Because John said it was the pilot was Jojo Imperial.
Yeah. Where is he?
With John Ryan, Jeff.
John Ryan was the actor. Can you flash that up again or not?
I can read it. The injured were John Ryan, Jeff Brewer, and Bani Simiratov, I think, who were all stuntmen, and the actor was Matthew Gomez. So
and my personal concern was the focus puller, who did recover. But he was, badly injured, and Gaddy, that was who the hairdresser was with. So that that was really, and Gaddy was gorgeous. I've got a picture of him and me at sunset, just talking. We stayed at a motel. It's boiling hot, with our own pool in the room and a pool outside. The outside pool was so hot you couldn't go in it. Boiling, almost not boiling, but much too hot. And I have a feeling that there was a brownout, which is what they call when the electrics all go off and you've got no heating. We might say a blackout. I think we do, but they call it a brownout. And there was not every night, but a few nights there was brownout, and it was like really unbearable. So we were all out of our rooms in the air, which was even, horribly hot. It was quite an experience, Delta Force 2. And the one before that I did was Return from the River Kwai, which I would like to say, the director was Victor McLaglen's son, who's Andrew McLaglen. And Victor McLaglen did a film at Elstree, in my road, and he was given a big Victorian house in my road. This is before I lived here. And so when I came to live here, I heard that this big, like a Victorian folly, or it almost is like Oakley Court, a mini Oakley Court it was. Anyway, so I know that Victor McLaglen lived there. And when I worked with Andrew, I told him this, and he said he was a little boy at the time and he lived there. So that was real magic, and we sort of, bonded. Even we were very bonded, very bonded, and that was the real bond.
Because Alan McLaglen obviously did wonderful films like North Sea Hijack of Roger Moore and Wild Geese, and obviously many others. What do you remember much about from the River Kwai? What was it like to do the return?
I know it was very hard work. Very enjoyable. I loved every second of it. And we had expats. He owned a bar with pole dancers. And I went one night, and I've got lovely pictures of me being I look like an elephant, because Filipinas are so petite. So I'm doing my pole dance, thinking that I'm looking, gorgeous, because I'm dressed accordingly. I'm in a dress, and I'm so happy. And then I see the pictures, and there are these minuscule girl pole dancers, and there's me as I say, looking like an elephant.
Because obviously the film has a great cast. Obviously, it has George Takei, who very famously played.
And he didn't. He spoke English, but the wonderful actor who I can't think who was the camp commandant, and he was in Ran. He was like the most famous Japanese actor. Where he did not speak one word of English, not one syllable, not one word. So he had a pretty terrible time. You know, it was very, very hard, but he did it. I can't think of his name. We'd have to look it up. I mean, I think of his name all the time, really. And we were friends in sign language or whatever, or interpret. I suppose we had an interpreter. And he had a boyfriend who played the Korean soldier in it, because I think they were Korean. They did a lot of the dirty work for the Japanese.
Yes,
but they were their footmen, as it were.
Because obviously Delholm Elliott was in the film, and obviously you worked with him again in A Woman with You. Delholm Elliott.
Denham. His name is Denham. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tatsuya Nakadai. Thank you.
So what was he like to work with on?
Denham Elliott is absolutely wonderful. He's gorgeous and wonderful, and he has a drink problem. And when he has a drink, and if the other actor happens to fluff, which was Betty Davis, who never fluffed but did, it finished him off, and he just couldn't do it. And it was like her fault, but because he also has a drink, it was like the worst night. It was the worst nightmare hour on a set that I can ever imagine. And he's absolutely beautiful, Denham Elliott. Gorgeous to work with.
I was just thinking of the scenes that you did on Casino Royale. Did you do the David Niven scenes with Barbara Boucher as Miss Moneypenny?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you know much about working with Barbara Boucher or those particular scenes? Did anything come back?
He'd make a very nice, strong relationship with whoever he was working with at that moment, and then they've gone. And that's it. Next. But what is so sad is when an actor finishes on the film, and we're still shooting, they go off the set and we do a little clap, and then they come back on the set dressed in their outdoor clothes, and nobody takes any notice of them because we're all so busy doing the next thing. I mean, it's absolutely heartbreaking.
I mean, did you find the fact that you go from job to job, country to country? Did you find that a bit nomadic, or did you enjoy it?
A bit nomadic, but what was so lovely is at the end of the film, even if you're out in Timbuktu, it's like you're going to see the people again. I mean, your heart breaks, goodbye, but you know that at least half of them you're going to meet again. And in England, all the time, at the end of the film, we're all crying and hugging and all this stuff. But on the next film that you do, half of them will be there, perhaps. So every time I say goodbye, I cry a little. The song, my partner, Ernie, was always playing that on the piano when he came back from anywhere.
Yes, lovely song, isn't it? I was wondering, what, in terms of you're saying obviously different actors would be a bit loose with the script, or you sometimes have to put them on point. With Val Guest, was he somebody that quite liked actors to sort of experiment?
I think, except that nobody would deviate because his scripts and his films were so like clipped and smart. No, I didn't. I didn't, John. Something I was going to say before that. What did you just ask me? Oh, the deviating of script. Now, I think on a Val Guest script picture, you had to say what was written. I think very much it was. I know what I was going to say to you. I learned early on, but not quite early enough, to ask the producer, the director, the minute that I ever met them, is the script sacrosanct? And one would say, no, not at all, whatever is, we would think. And another one would say, yes, it's written by Peter Nichols, and you are not allowed a different syllable.
Yeah. I mean, but with, say, Woody Allen, obviously writing his own material.
Well, I say that Val Guest is a tight script, but Woody Allen did not say one single word that was in the script.
Yeah.
or he transposed it. And he'd actually tell me what he was going to say, which was very lovely.
Yeah. So would you get Woody's material quite in advance, or was it very much on the?
No, I didn't see him. I didn't meet him until whatever day it was that he was on our segment, and there he was with Dahlia Larvae.
Yeah.
Doing stuff. And then I did some Barbara Boucher in the corridor on little cars, zooming along. Yeah, did a lot bit of that.
Yeah.
And then the wonderful scene, the kind of court scene.
In the film, is it? I don't think, is it? Because I think you mentioned to me before, there was like a court scene, and
there's definitely this court scene in the film that it's there, and the heat. It was his last day of shooting, and we worked till 11 p.m. I think, so that he could get his flight at 6 the next morning, something like that. It was so hot that people were almost fainting, but we had to do it. And the naughty Woody, he zoomed off in his costume, and he was going to steal it, and they like ripped it off his back in the airport practically, I think. And we must have had duplicates. We were a high budget movie.
Yeah.
And you'd think that the lead actor in a segment could have his suit. No. And he had very bitten fingernails, so he's a wreck.
Yeah, some people describe him as a genius.
It was early on film wise for him, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. I mean, obviously was a big name by this point, but obviously it was I think he was still very nervous about
he is a highly strung, nervous guy.
But a nice person to
work
with.
Lovely. And watching him, in other films or stand-up comic, and he's very, very lovable by me, to me, at me. And we've got to show everybody my proudest thing that you gave me.
Oh yeah.
It's here. I think you have to tell the story. You have to tell the story of this because you know the story.
Oh yeah, yes, that was I'm a Woody Allen and you're good.
John and everybody, look what I've got. Can you believe it? That's I nice. Signed it after Woody.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I think I got that from. I think it was a private signing. I think he did a long time ago. I think because Woody Allen came over, I think a few years ago, and he did a concert at the Albert Hall of all places, and playing the flute. I want to say, but it might not be been the flute. And obviously, autograph hunters like myself. One of these such events got him to sign this lovely print. I'm guessing they probably found off eBay somewhere. So obviously, I then bought it from the seller, and then obviously, cut to when we sort of started to communicate or sent it to you. You added your your name to it, and hopefully going to add more people, to these things in the future, because you signed quite a few Casino Royale items in the venue.
Yeah. And this is the original, and then I've made just copies of the original. Yeah. Or maybe this isn't. Maybe it isn't the original, because I sent the original back to you, didn't I?
Yeah, I think it might be a copy that you have, but but yeah, it's a lovely thing, I think, to have, and it's such a glorious bit of artwork, isn't it, as well?
It's so lovely, so lovely. John just said he's jealous, but he can take a screen grab of it.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it?
It's such a good image, though, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's lovely. Yes,
I mean, that's the good thing. It's a very I've just found her nose now. It's a bit of an unfortunate image, in actual fact. That face is very difficult to define.
Oh yes, exactly, yeah.
Very strange, but I love it.
Yeah,
absolutely love it. It's my proudest possession.
Oh, good. That's lovely.
And I have to defend the whole situation because of the naughty Woody. There are lots of people who are, really loathing him, and I have to just defend him as an artist.
Yes. I think there's lots of sort of potentially lots of very controversial figures in, any sort of industry, and I think unless you know personal details, I think you just got to kind of separate it and enjoy their work and try and leave everything else to one side if possible. John says I'm Team Woody too.
Excellent.
Yeah, I entirely agree. I think some of the funniest things from Casino Royale are Woody Allen's lines, like the firing squad scene when he's says, my doctor, I have a very low threshold of death. My doctor says I can't have bullets enter my body at any time, and lots of lovely lines like that. I think it is a major reason.
I imagine they're ad lib from him, but I don't know.
I mean, certainly they're definitely his lines.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Because did Val actually write the script himself? Did he do a new vision to the script? Do we know?
Do you mean on
Casino Royale, or would you happen to know who did the bits of the Val?
Not really.
Because I get the sense that even the bits that Val was doing, say the Casino Climax, from what I understand.
I mean, I don't. The link stuff. I don't know how it came about. I imagine. Creatively, artistically, Val wrote what he thought should be the link stuff, and then the producer would say, well, no, we can't afford that, or yes, that's great. I imagine that's how that happened, because they brought Val in to fix the linkage.
Oh yeah.
That was his title. And at the same time gave him an episode, but we shot linkages before the episode.
Oh wow!
I think when we finished the film with the finale, that wonderful finale where I met George Raft, which was the most thrilling thing that could possibly happen to me in my entire life, because I saw him in a film called Bolero with my father when I was 12, and it was probably the first grown-up film I'd seen, and I remembered it forever. And I've seen George Raft in a million other parts, and that's fine, but to actually stand there talking to him and be able to tell him that I was 13, and Jean-Paul Belmondo, who I'd not worked with, that was a bit of a thrill. And visiting the set was the Playboy editor, whose name is what?
Hugh Hefner?
Yes, and he gave me a pen and a scarf and various presents, and I stood talking to him for ages. So that was a little bonus.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And then the Ursula Andress I had not worked with, so now I had a little bit of her. That was amazing to be on that scene, I have to say.
There's so many people in it.
I think I'm going to take 1 million screen grabs from the film of that and carry them around with me. I think so.
It's a wonderful.
Because I'm now in nostalgia mode, aren't I? Because I'm actually not working that much, so I'm in full nostalgia mode all of the time.
Oh yeah, it's such a wonderful career to look back on as well. So you've got such a feast of things to look back on. So that's wonderful. We did have a question come in from 007 Travellers. It's been said that Peter Sellers and Orson Welles had some disagreements during the shoot. They didn't want to be in the same shots. Were you aware that there had been these falling out?
No, only as a rumor.
The rumor, yeah.
Yeah, because the 3 episodes had been shot and finished before I ever got there. So I didn't know anything except everything came to us from members of a crew that were on either of the other episodes.
Because I think Val did do a little bit with Orson Welles and Peter Sellers, I think just before Peter was fired, from what I can see from watching different documentaries and articles and things. But I assume that you weren't there.
I know I wasn't there, and he didn't talk about it.
So, was it quite difficult to come into a film that was already in kind of full swing, or?
Not really, because it was so clear what we were going to be doing. How we were going to do the stuff. And the makeup, the wardrobe, the lighter, they all had the knowledge of recreating their actors for us if needs be.
So was it sort of a good morale on the set? Was it quite everyone fairly happy set?
Yeah, it was a happy set. Yeah, except the last night trying to finish in time. I have to. Peter Ersfeld, really? Oh ho ho. Yes. The last evening was not a happy evening. Right. In order to try and get more in than we thought we could, and Jack Hilliard was the lighter, I seem to think. I'm not sure, but I think anyway, whoever was the lighter had a terrible time because it was this enormous set, brightly lit with all these characters, all these pretend people. So it was tough, and I know we worked till 11 p.m. from 8:30 in the morning, which we never do.
So the climax of the film, that was shot, because obviously it's a huge sequence, isn't it? The fight in the casino. Was that? I think you mentioned maybe that was about a week's worth of shooting, or was it a bit longer? That sort of length.
I don't really know. Or do you mean the finale?
Oh yeah, the finale. Yes.
Yeah. No, I would think it was probably 3 days. And it would be very, very expensive to imported George Raft and everybody. I can't remember the names at this minute, but that I hadn't worked. They may have been in another episode. They weren't actually, but I had never worked with the whoever I'm saying was there. Yeah.
Because I think George Raft, obviously doing his very famous coin flip, I think he had to relearn it for that sequence. I think he'd forgotten how to do it, and I think he was a bit nervous, and I think he didn't want to have many lines or anything like that. So,
but I mean, the horses were an amazing thing I don't know if you can hear fireworks. I've got the loudest fireworks going on.
Yes, I can hear them. Yes.
Why are there fireworks tonight? What's that all about? It's Ramadan.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Or it was Ramadan.
Hmm.
I think it's that. I can't think what else it can be.
Yeah, must be, yeah. So what are you saying? So about the horses and the
They had the horses on that stage with all those expensive actors. I mean, that was very, very daring.
Because there were a few accidents and injuries, a few broken arms, broken legs, that sort of thing. Did you?
As part of the course. No, I didn't know that there were actually.
Yeah.
And I don't remember. I mean, it must have been very brave ones who didn't complain until we'd wrapped.
Oh yeah, I think professional stuntmen would be very much sort of take it on the chin kind of sort of thing, really.
I mean, there's always a nurse, a nurse attached to the studio or the actual film. And now, on every film, a fairly large budget, the nurses go around in the morning giving us vitamins because they want. It's not like doing us a favour. They want the unit to keep healthy.
Yes.
Whereas roll back to years gone by, you could hardly get an aspirin out of them because they had no budget.
One of my favourite productions that you've been involved with is Around the World in 80 Days.
What a treat that was! I came back from Bridge over the River Kwai, I think, and I had an elderly mother who was widowed, so she had a Filipino looking after her. But I didn't really like to be out the country like for 3 months at a time, so I'd come back from whatever it was, River Kwai, and blow me, a unit manager, I can't remember his name, phoned me and said, I'd like you to meet the director. I've got to produce 2 or 3 script supervisors, to offer up to this director. And I said, I would love to do that film, that TV series, but really, I cannot, I mustn't. And he said, well, could you just do me this great favor of coming, because I've got to produce 3 script supervisors. You can refuse to do it afterwards, or but please would you act this role for me? And I said, oh, okay, but I don't want to do it anyway. I went, and of course I got it. And I laughed, and of course I loved every second of it. It was quite tough. And we went to about 10 countries, I think, but we didn't ever shoot. We'd be in Macau and we pretend it was Japan. We'd be in Yugoslavia and we pretend it's Morocco. I mean, we did not go to one place and use it where it was supposed to be, which was very strange, but it worked. And it was a lovely crew and lovely cast and lovely foreign units and so on. Wonderful.
And I believe there was an issue with Pierce Brosnan's hat at one point.
Yeah. We went on the plane ride together. I don't know whether it was out east or a plane ride anyway. And he told me about his wife who was dying and his lovely children and his father who popped up only when Pierce was famous. He'd totally abandoned the nurse mother and the child, and then he popped up like a year ago from this plane ride, and he was very disgusted with him. Yeah, but he was such a lovely person, Pierce. He must be the nicest, competent, beautifulest actor ever.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favourite Bonds, and I love his other films as well. And so he comes across as being,
on that plane ride, he told me that he had a contract with whatever show he was doing, the name of which I can't remember, and Bond had wanted him and they couldn't have him.
Yeah.
And eventually he finished that contract. And I'd never seen that series. I mean, it was very popular, but I'd just never.
Yeah, that was Remington Steele.
Yes, Remington Steele. Yes. Yeah.
I think that was very unfortunate because that was 86, I think it was. So it would have been Timothy Dalton's first Bond film, Living Daylights, that originally Pierce was going to do, and Remington Steele had technically finished, so he was available.
Yeah, he absolutely, absolutely could not.
but once he was signed to Bond, the Remington Steele producers thought, okay, maybe there's some more life in this. So they had an option to do more episodes, and like on the option was due to expire on day 30, and this was like day 28, and they said to Pierce, we're going to make 6 more episodes. So very naughtily, they resurrected the series just for a little bit, and then it disappeared again. Which is kind of very, very, and obviously it's a terrible thing that happened to Pierce. But I think when he did get Bond in '95, that might have been perhaps a better time anyway, because it was a bit more mature, and obviously his films are very successful, but it must have been quite a disappointment at the time, definitely. As you were saying that plot-wise, we've got a question just come through. John said, there's a famous story about how they had to strike the casino
and rebuild it. Yeah, I don't know anything about that. Was it my set?
For Climax and rolled out. Yes, he says that there was a custom rug. There was a custom made rug for the set, and someone had cut out a living room's sized section of the rug. Did you hear that story? So basically, I think the set was struck after David Niven and Peter Sayers and Orson Welles scenes, and then I think there's probably a gap between that and then the climax. So it was all taken apart, including this lovely sort of tiger rug, and put in storage. Somebody thought that it was all done, and
they send it back to the.
Did you hear about that?
No, I don't remember. I don't remember hearing about any art department misdemeanor.
It sounds like that was quite a sticky situation, really, because it was quite a long shoot, of course, and it was shot on Shepperton and Pinewood. Because I think your bits were done at Pinewood, I believe. It might be Shepperton.
I really don't know. And I would like to think that my son Mark would know, because he had broken his jaw and he had a wired up mouth and an arm in a sling, recovering. So he was off school, and so for a week or so I took him with me every day to the studio, and he set himself up in a corner to do his schoolwork. But I can't really. I feel it was Shepperton, but it may well have been Pinewood. I mean, in my whatevers, I feel it was Shepperton.
I've got a feeling it's Shepperton as well. I think it was. They definitely used both studios, but I think I want to say it was Shepperton as well. I think it may have been.
If you just said to me, where was it? I'd automatically said Shepperton.
Shepperton, yeah.
But then I read that it was both.
So I think along with this film, obviously you're in the Trice, the official Bond film was in production at the same sort of time. So the British film industry was basically surviving on the two films for 66, 67 really. And a lot of the crew would sort of meet at lunchtime and share stories.
I mean, fortunately, our studios could always have 2 productions or 3 sometimes working. So in the bar, you saw everybody all the time. Every time I cry, every time I say goodbye, I cry a little. Hardly happens in England. It's only when you're on location.
Hmm.
And we automatically drank at lunchtime. Men a couple of beers maybe, and me a small whiskey. And at night straight, well, I had notes to do, so I didn't always get there immediately. But certain films, wrap straight to the bar. And I often used, when we were allowed to do written notes and not typed notes, which was quite early on, I used to take my script and sit in a corner and do my notes. Or on location, I always did them in the bar at night. And everybody drank. Nobody got drunk, ever. Maybe Jeff Seaholm, a brilliant camera operator who had a car accident on a Friday night. So Friday night they would drink. Yes, Friday night they drank a lot. Anyway, he had a quite serious car accident. And Malcolm Terrace, actor friend, he had a car accident.
Yeah.
I don't know about other car accidents, but it was a very drinking society.
Yeah.
And Cyril Collick, most wonderful sound mixer, he didn't drink, and he was kind of practically ostracized. You had to drink. You didn't have to get drunk, but you had to drink.
So obviously, a couple of the main changes then, obviously the years, obviously was that drinking, I imagine, became out of fashion as the years went by. Also, obviously, the job changed to script supervisor. Apart from, what were the other sort of, how else did you see the industry evolve over the years?
Well, I mean, video assist came. Well, first of all, Polaroid cameras came.
Oh yeah,
which was wonderful. I had it cost £100, which is like 1,000 now. My first Polaroid, and it was through the director. It was through Cy Roth, if that was his name, the Fire Maidens director. He actually, I think he sold me his, or he got me one somehow, and I was one of the first people to have it. It was like a pull-out portrait camera, but Polaroid, and I could not believe that I had such luck that my job changed from torture to just difficult.
And any other sort of changes apart from sort of certain technologies?
The other technology, lovely change, was going from sound on film to sound on tape, where you could play back anything.
Yes.
Oh, could you just play me back that? Oh, video says, oh, could you just run me back that? That is a big help, but it isn't. It doesn't help us with everything. And a phone call to the editor, sometimes, you have to do that sometimes to check from something you've done a month ago, maybe not got enough notes on it. And that's very helpful. But now I don't see that it's any different, except that it's digital now, and they don't play back anything, and they're so extravagant, filmmakers now. A documentary was made about me by the film students who live next door to me, and they shot 5 hours of material for a 20-minute documentary.
Right.
5 hours.
Yeah.
And I just thought, when you get out into the big bad world, you won't be doing that.
No, that's right. Did you do any location work on Casino Royale at all? Was it all sort of studio?
I can't remember going anywhere. I actually can't remember being out in sunlight or rain. Mostly on films, I'm mostly out in the rain, sitting on my little stool, which actually I'm sitting on now. It's very comfortable. In the gutter. I spent a lot of my time in the gutter. rain, wind, snow, hot.
So it's quite nice to be in well, obviously the studio, obviously you're saying.
Oh, I mean, it's a form of heaven.
Yeah.
But the other dreadful is interiors, but genuine, people's houses or offices or hospitals. I mean, it's enjoyable, but it's tough. Studio is easy. I like studio.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's much more controlled, isn't it, in environment as well. Was there any sort of other changes, obviously, because you were saying that continuity girls, because obviously it was all sort of a female role.
I have to say, the reason that it was male in America and it was female here because we had to type these things called continuity sheets for every slate.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you've typed 5 copies, carbon copies. You've typed maybe 11 continuity sheets. And only females in England learnt shorthand and typing. So that was why it was there was one man boy for a little, he lasted about 2 years. I don't know, why or what, but we've always been female. Whereas in America, they were always male because they wrote the notes.
Yeah.
And they wrote notes, and the cutting rooms the following day made more accurate so-called sheets. And then women still doing the same system started, and now I don't see men's names actually. There may be some, but I mostly see women. And Woody Allen has special one, and Polanski had special one, and John Huston had English. He was Angela Allen. Anyway, there are because I worked on Beverly Hillbillies, which were totally American, and various other American things. An American male script supervisor, who's head of the union or whatever, he approached me a couple of years ago and said, I'd like to join you. I'm making a big database of every continuity script person that ever was in America, not here. Anyway, and I said, I was on the liner, I think what it's called, very American, a whole episode I did. And so he said, and then Delta Force got finished in America. Anyway, it didn't happen. But I was in touch with him, which was nice.
Oh yeah, very much so. I'm just going to think about some of the, because now we're getting towards the end of the film. We've got some fantastic sets in Woody Allen sort of layer. What was it like sort of seeing these fantastic sets? Were they impressive? Was it memorable?
Yeah, no, I mean, I love art directors, and I love sets. And it's always a bit exciting to see the new set. You've probably seen drawings of it, or sort of plans. But it's just the magic. But it's the magic that you just take for granted. You're not freaked by anything, and you're not overexcited by anything. You'd never survive if you were a kind of highly strung, a too highly strung person. And you have to have a very strong bladder. Whenever any students say that they want to be script supervisors, and I just say, you never be able to go to the loo, and you just seriously have to have a strong bladder. You go off the set, and then they put the green light on because they're rehearsing, you can't get in, and then they put the red light on and you certainly can't get in, and you miss a shot because they won't wait for you. I mean, on a big picture they'd have to wait for you, but they'd be furious.
And again, sort of very long working days, aren't you?
Long days, and added the travel the lovely thing about location is, you know, you're transported everywhere and you don't have to drive. And so a long day is bearable. But in a studio that's the other side of London, or, you know, for me, Shepperton is quite a long way. A long day is not, I was used to it, but it wasn't fun. Or not, it was fun, it wasn't funny.
Yeah.
And I was obsessive about getting my 7 hours of sleep. Otherwise, my eyes would sting the next day at about 5 o'clock.
Right.
So absolutely obsessive, this 7 hours that I worked out that I could have.
Because we're currently looking at the scene with Woody Allen and David Niven and Bob Boucher as well. Did David Niven and Woody Allen get on well on set?
I can't remember them ever like sitting. There was no time to sit on their chairs ever. Pretty well. But anyway, I can't visualize David Niven and Woody sitting together and chatting. I think they would, if they had a moment, they'd go to their dressing room rather than sit on the set. I think. I don't have a mental picture. You know, often I've got a mental picture of where I was for every setup, and who was where. But I don't on Casino Royale. I only see the actual shooting. The piano, the grand piano, and the plonky thing that that she was on, strapped. Yeah. Yeah, that was quite sordid, really.
Yes, and that's what we've just come to now. Actually, with Davio on the sort of with the metal contraption over.
No, that was really rather. It was rather sordid. I'm now realizing.
But it seemed normal at the time.
It did.
Yeah.
It did.
And again, Davio and Woody Allen have a very good chemistry in their scenes as well. So.
Oh yeah. No, Dahlia, she was absolutely lovely, and the Boucher was absolutely lovely, and Joanne Petit. She was lovely. And apart from the finale, I don't remember any other actors.
Yeah, I think those were one of the main principles I think that you've been involved with. With Joanna earlier, we saw some scenes shot in Horse Guards Parade and things like that in central London. So I was just wondering whether or not you were around for that or not. This may have been a different segment.
I seemed to do a lot of Joanne Pettit running. And the cars chasing the funny little cars. Did that.
Was it all technically without a hitch? Was it all quite? It all went quite.
Yeah. I can't remember. So anything not working.
I mean, when you see when you see the car sequence now, it's obviously quite a mad little sequence with these sort of almost like toy cars and.
Yeah. No, and of course it was anything goes anyway.
Yeah.
They were bumping into the walls and everything, and they were supposed to do that, and they did it, and nothing. Their engines didn't stop.
And we've got obviously David Prowse, who played Darth Vader in the Star Wars
film. Yeah.
Monster, and again very sort of very psychedelic sequence. But when you went on to the film, did you know it was going to be this sort of
full? I don't think I did, but when they phoned me and asked me to do it, they must have sent me a script whereby which wouldn't have been complete really, because of a lot of it was not on the cuff but not decided upon. But I realized that it was something I didn't understand at all, and was zany, and it was going to be exciting. It was going to be okay, because if Val Guest was the director, he makes it so easy for everyone.
Yeah.
I worked with Ken Hughes quite a bit, but not on Casino Royale, and he was a personal friend.
Yeah.
And John Huston I'd never seen. And who else was there?
Joe Mcgrath was the original.
Joe Mcgrath. I did lots of commercials with, more than anything. I think only commercials, and I absolutely loved him.
How was?
And he did a Doctor Who at Pinewood, and the only feature, I think. And and he was shooting on the lot, and I went, and I had my 2 sons with me, and the special effects were shouting at me as if I was like an idiot, and going to walk on the cables, the bombs. But I saw him directing Doctor Who, and nobody seems to agree with me that there was such a film, but I know there was. It was at Pinewood.
There definitely was. There were two films with Peter Cushing as Doctor Who.
Really.
There were remakes of various episodes, so it was kind of, it wasn't an official Doctor Who, but it was a movie version of them. And yes, there was.
It definitely was. The title had Doctor Who in it.
And there were the Dalek stories as well. So they had the Daleks in both.
No, I mean, my partner Ernie made the Dalek for my sons out of whatever, and the Dalek was, I think, chest high.
Yes. Yeah.
That was really good. So we were Dalek obsessed for years, and even now. And Simon Clark, who's a sound man, and he is the chief of sound at Beaconsfield Film School. Doctor Who 2000 AD.
Oh yes,
was the name. Yeah. Anyway, Simon Clark shot the sound of about 3 years ago, like 20 Daleks walking over London Bridge or Westminster Bridge, and he managed to buy one of them.
Oh wow!
And they were, I think, over man size.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But he was thrilled. He had to fight to buy it. He told me that someone else had it and he bought it off him because of that. But I don't know where he is, where he kept the Dalek, in his office probably at Beaconsfield.
Yes, and the BBC are quite protective of things like the Dalek, so to get an actual one, but I think would be quite a feat. But there's lots of societies out there who specialise in recreating Daleks, and
I mean there's a Dalek land, really. There's a land of Daleks somewhere.
Oh yeah. You always see them at conventions and.
Yes. Yeah.
So Joe Mcgrath, how would you describe him as a person and as a director, and how would he be different to say Val Guest?
He's gorgeous to work with. Absolutely gorgeous. And I don't think I ever did anything more than 1,000 commercials. I don't think I did any episodes of anything or work. No, love them. I had the luxury and the money and the payment, as well, of working on commercials for a certain. I always worked on commercials occasionally, but I had a period, and I've forgotten why, where my IMDb looks like I wasn't working, but I was doing commercials maybe for like 3 years, because it was better for my home life, children, and so on. And so that was a lot of Joe, and a lot of commercial directors had not made a feature film, and then they went on to be the biggest feature directors. So they learned their trade with J. Walter Thompson. They were good days.
It was obviously such a shame that Joe was obviously fired from the film to begin with, because obviously your description, it would be so unlikely for somebody like Joe to be fired. But I think that just shows the problems that he had with Peter Sellers, because obviously.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, I didn't even know that. I mean, I'd heard way back that he was fired, maybe, but I hadn't taken it in, and I didn't know tonight that he was fired. So who took over?
I think that might have been the point where Ken Hughes came in. I mean, John might.
Oh, really?
Better than I, but
well, I mean, he's a Joe Grath, so he'd have had a terrible time. He's not. You needed a John Huston or I don't know who, Frankenheimer or someone to control a Wells and a Sellers. I mean, you know, it's a bit. It was a bit foolish getting a Joe Mcgrath.
Well, I think they probably realised the problems that were going to happen. But originally, it was just going to be a straightforward sort of comedy, and it wasn't until Joe got fired by Peter that basically it then became this sort of five segments sort of deal.
I mean, Orson Welles to work with. I only did port and wine. Double. He was. I can't think what you could call it when you're a person talking to the other person that's you.
Oh yeah, like
split screen. Okay,
yeah.
Split screen. And Orson Welles was the most intelligent, knowledgeable, friendly, warm, gorgeous person in the world to work with. And the director was an elderly commercials director, but with a knowledge of special effects, a particular knowledge of. It was respectful to him, respectful to us. Wonderful. I've never even seen Peter Sellers. I mean, I never met him, never worked with him. I never went on a set where he was. And I admire his work. I love his work beyond belief. And I know that he's difficult and has to phone his mother and all that. But I can't understand why they were, what the conflict was between them.
Yeah.
And maybe maybe the world knows. I don't know.
I know that Peter Sellers was responsible for Orson Welles coming on the film. Peter was quite a fan of Orson Welles, and he wanted to be in scenes with him. And but I think Peter was having some problems with his marriage to Britt Eklund at the time, and also I think he was recovering from a major heart attack, one of many that he had over his lifetime. So,
oh yes, yeah, I remember of that. Yes,
I think he had lots of personal problems, and I think to the point where he may have been quite insecure for various reasons, and I think maybe he was a bit intimidated by Orson Welles, and obviously then Peter was behaving erratically, not turning up on set, going away to Switzerland or Sweden for the weekend, wherever it might be. So obviously then Orson Welles was thinking, I don't want to work with this guy because he's not professional. So I think the relationship sort of just broke down from there. But I did hear that later on they did become friends.
Oh really?
So that's kind of nice. But obviously on the film, it was supposed to be this dream pairing, and of course it was responsible really for a lot of the problems. But you said your experience of Orson Welles was that he was really nice to be with.
So nice. I mean, so nice. And Peter Shillingford, who used to be a focus puller, and then he was a producer of commercials in England and a big friend. And his brother is Dave Shillingford, who's the top camera operator. Anyway, he went to Hollywood, Peter Shillingford, and made a big success of having a commercials company. And he worked with Orson Welles numerous times, I think, well, certainly a couple of times on major advert films, which I've seen in the last few years. And I mean, I've never heard that Orson Welles has been a horrible person to work with.
No.
And we know that Peter Sellers was always awkward I didn't experience him, and I don't know anyone that did. I mean, I've never talked to anyone who said, you know, it's wonderful but difficult.
Yeah, I think certain stories about, you say, Peter Sellers being difficult pretty consistently, but Orson Welles, you know, always seems to come off very well. Do you have a question from John? Did you work with Hugh Hudson and or Robert Brownjohn on commercials?
No, never. No. I saw him on other sets. The makeup artist always worked for him, and she actually did a film for him as well. But I never had them for some reason.
And you said you worked with Ken Hughes.
Oh yeah, I did a film for House Across the Lake. I think it was a Hammer. And I knew him socially when he was at Merton Park. He was a nice guy and lovely to work with, very, very clever. And he did amazing things after my time with him. I did a little bit on can't remember the title of a film he did, a top hole film.
Oh yes, yeah.
And I did some second unit on that, and that was lovely. And Top Hole was absolutely wonderful guy, lovely guy.
Oh, brilliant! Yes, because he was obviously a lead in Through Eyes Only, the Bond film, Roger Moore. So obviously Bond fans recognise him from obviously Fiddler on the Roof, of course.
And my Top Hole time was him very early coming to London to work, England. Yeah. I mean, he was very well known. He'd done his Fiddler somewhere, but we did not know him as an actor in a comedy or a drama. I'll have to try and find the title of that film and the director.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been Ken Hughes, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Going back to the Casino Royale climax scene, obviously, so you've got horses, you've got dogs, you've even got a seal in there, you've got cowboys dancing around a little fire, and with Indians dancing on a fire. You've got bubbles floating around the place.
Bubbles, yeah. And you've got a lot of special effects added.
Yeah.
So, you know, so some of the things weren't there at all.
I mean, what was that? What was that like? It must have been a very interesting.
It was a nightmare. It was you couldn't envisage a worse nightmare.
Yeah.
For everybody. It was, you know, wonderful, exciting, and ridiculous.
So you kind of obviously could keep the continuity, but there's a certain point where.
Well, yeah, I mean, it hardly matters because, you know, there's going to be so many cuts, and you're never going to like do a cut straight into that horse opening its mouth and kicking or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I seem to think it was like beyond me, actually. I just had to let it say what it was and let it go.
Yeah. Because I imagine there's quite a bit that was shot that didn't get into the film. Actually, in the trailer that's on, I think the DVD that I sent you.
Yeah.
More of the sequence, and obviously there's lots of deleted scenes that we'll never see because I think they were all lost through time. So there must have been loads of stuff that was done that, especially when the direction kept changing, because there's a lot of Peter Sellers stuff that they couldn't use because by the time the plot would change, and therefore these scenes couldn't
work. Yeah.
And also, of course, of him being fired midway through, they shot obviously certain scenes that required a scene before to be shot, and so a lot of stuff was obviously on changed from that point of view. because when you first obviously heard you were going to be doing a Bond film, did that conjure up images of Dr. No from Russia of Love?
It did, but not totally, because I knew I was, told early on what we were going to do. And I'd known that the 3 episodes were finished.
Yeah.
So, and they were in a mess, and they didn't know how to get out of the mess.
Yeah.
And so Val guessed the answer to their dreams. I knew that it was going to be easy for me because of him.
Yeah.
Just happy.
Because it must be very difficult just to have your section of the script, because obviously you must have wanted
Yeah.
to do the whole thing. Because
I'm sure I did only have my section.
Yeah, but obviously
and then it would be a page or a couple of pages when it was the funny pickup shots.
Yeah, and obviously with pages coming in
without me really knowing who they were or why they were.
Yeah. I mean, did you like that kind of working, or was it kind of?
I don't mind. I mean, it's not favourite, I have to say, but I mean, I adapt psychologically to absolutely anything and everything. My mother was a very strong person, and she said, you must enjoy everything you ever do, even if it's something that you loathe doing. Really. Yeah. So working out in the rain, I think, oh, this is fine, this is okay. I just learnt from her, and I've passed it on to quite a few people who didn't know that you have to remember to do that.
Oh yeah, I think it's low philosophy to have. I think we all forget to do that, well,
you do when you're kind of suffering. You do forget.
Yeah, you do. I mean, do you have any other memories from your time on the film that we haven't touched on, or if we can't touch most of it?
I'd like to say I might have, but I can't really recall anything.
And I mean, so after you did the film, you probably didn't really think much of it. When
Well, no, I thought, this is big, but this is a mess, and the rumors, round the studios was that it was a folly. And when it came out, and you said it was a bit well received, but I thought it was practically laughed out of the cinema.
I mean, money-wise, it did okay. I think they would have liked it to have been bigger, and it played quite well in America, but in certain parts of Europe, maybe the humour didn't quite work. So it wasn't a failure, but certainly the critics didn't like it, and people didn't know what to make of it.
The critics, I know they didn't. They really didn't like it. But now I like it more. Oh, thanks, Anne. I've forgotten what I was going to say. I mean, I thought it was a folly. I really did. And then I love it more every time I think of it now.
But so when did that consciously change? When did you?
About 10. I would think 10 years ago.
Because obviously this.
I stayed, folly.
Yeah.
On it for many a long year. Ooh, a light just went off. Is it my light?
I still see you okay. Yeah, you're fine.
It's quite. Maybe it's even better lighting now.
Yeah, no, a bit darker. Yeah.
I'd like you to know that we've been talking for 2.5 hours non-stop.
That's usual for us, isn't it? I think. So.
Yeah, but not for an audience.
No. Well, everyone stayed with them. God bless them.
Ant is still there because he said something.
Yeah,
just
still
now.
with us. Yeah, we've got everybody.
Good, Ant.
with
I'm
us.
proud of you, Ant. I really am.
Because obviously when we first met, I think it was 2015 or something like that. Obviously Casino Royale was one of the main reasons why I wanted to meet you. When did you start to see that? So sort of was it that sort of time that you're getting Bond fans knowing, recognizing you?
Yeah, I got resurrected, as it were, at a Jimmy Sangster showing of one of his films at the Barbican. I had not been near a Hammer person or a festival or anything, and I had more or less just about stopped work. I was doing, if somebody wanted a short, I did a short, and I would do a crappy film, but I think I thought I'd stopped. Anyway, I went to this Barbican, and as the people were coming out of seeing the Jimmy Sangster, 2 or 3 came to me and said, will you sign my book, or will you sign this photograph? And I said, oh no, you think I'm an actress? I'm not an actress. And they said, no, we know who you are, Miss Glynne. We know exactly who you are. So I started signing things. Yeah. And I was astounded. And then lovely, I can't remember his name now, who did all the Bray yearly gatherings at Oakley Court. No, at Down Place, we did it, always Down Place. I wish I could remember his name. Anyway, he made these wonderful reunions for Bray Hammer actors. And I went to all of them, and so then I got a bit used to more signing things and mini interviews, but not recorded interviews. And then it's just grown into now I can hardly not have one date for the week after next or next month or whatever, and it's lovely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And having to be this now own lighter and camera operator came as a bit of a shock, because always there's been a crew. Yeah. And I only have to, dress the set how I want it, and they then move things a bit, and I just luxuriate but worry about it. Well, now I don't worry about it. I just spend hours getting us ready.
I'm just going to read some comments out that people might not have seen.
Yeah,
obviously, Ant did say that about the 2 Doctor Who films. So obviously, Doctor
Who.
Yes.
I'm glad he knows that, because I didn't know that at all.
That was 65, and then they filmed another one, Dark Invasion of Earth, 2150 AD. That was 66. John said he just wants to thank you for this brilliant afternoon here in the US. Thank you so much.
Where is he, John?
He's in America. I'm not sure exactly where, but he's based in Florida. That sounds very glamorous.
Yes, he says he's Florida. Yeah.
He says,
and Ant's in Pasadena.
Oh, very, very nice.
And Pasadena, the cinema in Pasadena is the cinema that was used in that wonderful film, and I can't tell you the title. My favorite film of all times, and I can't tell you the title, but I will one day. It's not a Hammer, it's a thriller.
Oh, right, yeah. I'm sure.
Like LA something or other, it might be called. Anyway, the Pasadena cinema is the cinema.
Oh, that's wonderful. John says, thanks so much for putting up with all my questions.
Yes, he's a very good questioner. You're a very nice questioner. Oh, the player. Thank you, John. Don't leave, because I need you to fill me in. Oh, the player, that is my favorite film ever. The Player.
Oh yes, I think I've seen bits and pieces of that. Yes, yeah. And Anne just wanted to mention that says I'm very proud of you, and he also says you're an honourable member of the Dracula Society.
Yes,
yeah.
Ant's wife is a previous wife was a jazz singer, and she was working with Donna Dawson, who was Dracula Society, and Lorraine told her about me, and from that I did an interview, which I was very nervous in the pub on Hampstead Heath. I can't remember the name of the pub, but the interview was so good that it made me funny and not looking nervous. And that was, I think, the first interview that I had to do. Forgotten what I was going to say, really. What am I going to say? Why was I telling you this? Because John, someone said I was a member of the Dracula, and for years, like 3 or 4 years, I went to their yearly dinner and got feted. It was nice, and met interesting Dracula followers, and they had a great deal of unrest in the people that ran it, and a bad feeling and so on. At which point it faded out for me, and I see them sometimes in the front row at the Cinema Museum or at South Bank, the people that are still there, and they're sort of acquaintance friends of mine. They're very, I mean, the Dracula Society, you can imagine, obsessively enthusiastic.
Oh yeah.
And they go to Whitby every year automatically, and they go to Manchester Festival of something films, where I got given. I'm going to go and get it and show it to whoever's left.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll be 2 minutes. Everybody that goes to this Manchester Festival, actually for the first time they get their kind of Oscar.
Oh wow, that's lovely.
But she's very. I mean, I think I might have to put her sideways so you can see the whole thing first.
Well, yeah, you can see it all. That way we can see it full as well. Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah, or I go back.
Yeah, it's lovely, that, isn't it? You put it a bit closer. Yeah.
Closer?
Yeah, a bit closer. Yeah, bit more. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, and it's got writing on the bottom which says, Sophia. It's a Sophia, and it then says Renée Glynne underneath. So that says Sophia.
Yeah.
So she is this wonderful New York.
Yeah. I think John said it's Metropolis reference, isn't it?
It's Metropolis. Yes, Metropolis. Thank you, John. Don't leave us. Don't leave us.
Yeah, it's lovely that. Very, very good indeed. Because obviously you had a very strong relationship with Hammer Films over the years, and obviously.
I did, but I left before the horror films. A, I was going to have a baby. And B, I didn't really want to do them. I thought they were beneath my dignity, and I thought they'd be rubbishy. And I've never liked watching. I mean, I could say that I've never seen any of them. I've seen excerpts, but I haven't seen any of them, and I'm not interested in them. But at least I now don't admit to having been so shirty about them.
Because obviously, was it Voyage to the Seven Golden Vampires or something?
Yeah, well, that was different though, you see, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was different.
Because that was obviously the Hammer the horror one. Was there any other horrors we did? Was it that mainly that's that?
No, I did. I mean, I did a modern, which is called The Horror of It All, but it neither was a Hammer nor was it a period. I think if I'd been offered AD 2021 or whatever it's called, the modern setting, Dracula.
Yeah.
I think I would have enjoyed working on that, but I just didn't like the period, because I loved the 1933 Boris Karloff, Lon Chaney stuff. I was not willing to give my heart to any remakes. That was really the truth of it, kind of stubbornness. And I stayed with that thought for many a long year, and now I'm a bit more easy.
So what got you onto the Golden Vampires? Was that?
Oh no, I loved that, because that was so, that was Dracula, but it was very different.
So it's because it was different that why you?
Yeah, and it was Michael asking me to do it, going out to Hong Kong, which was absolutely lovely, and the crew were, for me, wonderful. It was not a happy time for the producers of that or Shatter. They suffered greatly, but we didn't suffer.
No, because it was kind of the end of Hammer, wasn't it? In its first thing.
Yeah, it was like Hammer's last. It was like Hammer's last stand, wasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't do too much after then, obviously,
and the conflict between father and son, which is noted, and I can't believe how awful it was, because I knew them both for all those years, and they were both great people. That was really horrible and tragic.
And how was Peter Cushing on that particular film?
He was very sweet. But he was mourning. He's always mourning for the loss of his wife, and so he's not jolly. But he was, lovely to work with, and I guess he didn't join in any of the shenanigans, of which there were quite a few. I can't remember ever seeing him in an evening anywhere.
Because I think his wife did die quite a long time before he did. So I think he was in mourning for.
That's right. And he had a terrible guilt complex also, which came out later, or publicly came out later.
Right. Because I remember Joanna Lumley, I think, in a recent interview, she said that, because obviously Peter Cushing did an Avengers, obviously one of yours, on the new Avengers, and apparently Peter said to her one day, talking about the careers or whatever, and Peter was saying, "Well, I'm just waiting to join my wife." He was kind of.
Oh, really?
Was, which is lovely in many respects. So that devotion.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oops.
Oh
dear.
On your side.
Oh dear. Oh.
So we'll try and get Renée back in a second. Sorry everyone, I'll just go and get Renée back, and then we'll wrap it up. So please bear with us.